mindful of what's happening right here, right now. Not focusing on problems even. None of them were able to do it. 2 minutes. Their minds automatically rush to 5 other different things. I have to take care of this, my cell phone is ringing, I have to run to this place, something else I'm thinking about. These are students that are going to school to figure out how to help people, and they couldn't sit for 2 minutes. So I said to the assistant, I said, you can't really do it yourself for 2 minutes. How do we expect somebody else who has severe issues to be able to sit with it? But this is something as a society, we've lost the ability to do this. We've lost the ability to be able to sit, to just be present, to be able to be mindful of what's going on. Forget about making a solution, to just be able to be present with it. We're going to run away to 10 different places at the same time. A friend of mine, he is the director of a camp, a boys' camp. And he tells me every year, progressively, it becomes harder to entertain the kids. They keep thinking of new and creative ideas about how to entertain the kids. So the highlight of boys' camps is inter-camp games. They have their best team in the camp plays against the best team of the next camp, and the whole camp is watching, and it's the most exciting thing. And he says that over the past 2 years, by the time half the game is finished, they have all one girl. And he goes to ask him, like, where'd you run away to? Oh, you just got bored. Like, what are you doing? Nothing. But this is like progressively, we're hitting this challenge, how can't even sit and do regular tasks. I see myself, I would say every 2 years, it's a whole new set of, like, you have to rethink what's the mindset of the kids every 2 years. It's before Corona and after Corona is a different one. Completely different one.
In what way?
The issues that are coming out, and how I would say, like, as far as like self-determination, chutzpah, the levels of exposure, it's a completely different world that happened before Corona and after Corona.
And what do you attribute that to?
I think even that small amount of time, here in Lakewood we had the least amount of time in the whole United States of how long our schools were closed. But the kids were on their own, so let's say from Purim time until Shavuos. They were on their own. And they had to figure out ways to entertain themselves, and the parents, there's only that amount of time that parents could be with their kids 24/7. And there was a lot of stuff that was going on that crept in. You know, the amount of technology usage went up. The amount of kids that were introducing things to other kids went through the roof. That, like, kids' attitudes changed because all of a sudden they're in charge about how to figure out what to do with their day. So, like, do you pick up the phone and listen to the class and listen to Shir? Like, some of them did and some of them didn't, and some of them did it in their pajamas. It was a whole different world that opened up. I'm not making a joke. There were a lot of boys who were listening to Shir in their pajamas. I don't know if the girls were doing it. Before Shabbos, after Shabbos, going to Minyan became optional. Go ahead.
And the interesting paradox with it was that I'm sure if you took a survey of people on their opinions on family life, people will say that Corona era brought back a certain wholesomeness and a family life, but at the same time it unraveled the structure of what's expected in the day-to-day.
And you don't think they bounced back at this point?
Many didn't. Many people because the world at large around you.
Things change. Well, what I'm saying is that things change.
And they still do.
Progressing along very, very fast. I want to say just a little bit about technology. Technology, there's like, when we talk about socialization, they have to think about socialization in their eyes. It means something else today. It means something else. When you're text messaging with other people, you've now developed a different form of communication. You don't have to have long conversations with them. They're very short conversations, and you respond whenever you're in the mood of responding. Right? Somebody sends you a message, you respond the next day. It became a whole different way of how you socially interact. You have group chats. You have group phone calls. You could be on a group phone call and you don't have to say a word. We connect and disconnect at any time we want with technology. Which could sound like a convenience, but it becomes a real challenge when you haven't figured out really how to connect it in a healthy way. Even the kids who don't have technology, once the atmosphere changes, it changes for all the kids. When they start communicating in a different way, so then all the kids start communicating in a different way. It's not like if you kept your home free of technology, then all of a sudden your child knows how to socialize better than the rest of the kids. There's a different form of communication today. It's touch and go communication. People don't have, like they don't sit and go for walks and sit and schmooze Shabbos afternoon for hours. Unfortunately, it's very sad. It's something of the past. I hear this all the time from the kids. Shabbos, Shabbos is the most special day of the week. Shabbos, you get to spend time with family, you get to visit people, you get to sit around and enjoy each other's company and for food, and there's nothing to do, and you can relax, and you can sleep a little later. I can't tell you how many kids have told me that Shabbos is tremendous stuff. Tremendous stuff. They're bored out of their minds. They have no idea what to do when they're bored. It became the most difficult thing for them in the world. They talk about they count down the minutes that Shabbos is over.
Is there a difference between the boys and the girls? Do you know?
We hear this from the boys and the girls. I can't tell you like percentage-wise, but we hear this both from the boys and from the girls. Shabbos is our hardest day. What's the earliest man that Shabbos could be over? I don't know, for me, it's like, what's the latest Shabbos to be over? But this is the way it is. It's very sad. And even if we look at like how things are developing, I don't know what the next stage of this is. But even, who reads anymore? Like, why should you read if you could watch the same thing and it's like you did it only in 2 hours? Not dealing with mainstream kids, but even the kids who watch movies, they're too bored to watch a regular movie. They have to watch television shows because it's only half an hour.
I don't have my question so clear, and it's probably more of a core question, which is something I struggle with all the time. When you talk about how, in the sentence you said that every 2 years
it's like a whole new generation of kids.
And all the information you're giving us, you end up with a generation that we understand them so well, and we're so validating and empathetic, which we have to be.
Understand it, but okay.
We try. We try. You end up, it becomes a little bit of a blurry line of when you can expect and demand and push, and then you validate, and so you end up with children that it used to be that you could push them much further. The line becomes very blurry.
Yeah,
and you end up treating children that really should be pushed further. You lower the bar.
Right.
It's even the same question when you're saying with, the homes that are more, you want to keep them more sheltered and you do everything that's right, but they just kind of feel left behind because the social norm moved on and they're just left behind. So then as we're saying, I'm thinking, so like, where's the pushback? Right. So we're basically saying either go with it or you're just left behind.
I'm not here in charge of society, and I'm definitely not the one that's pushing what the agenda is. But this is the reality of what's happening today, and
that's her question. Her question is, where do you say us in this position we want to hold on a little stronger, and where do we say you have to understand them?
I don't know why you can't do both. When we're understanding them, we're not giving them permission to do this. We're understanding what they're struggling with.
But when you describe someone who's in pain, it could be that someone's in pain because they're not doing well in school. That's a normal thing that happens, like Rabbi Rashiva was saying, that's part of life. But they can decide to check out of life for a week because that became sort of the amount of understanding. And the amount of understanding.
What I'm saying is, even if it's not acceptable, even if they're not, they lack the ability, they lack the training for it. Notice this even with books. With books, so we're going to say there's going to be less people reading books because there's easier ways to understand. People who do read books, at least they read. When you walk into the store now, even the Yiddish books, they become graphic novels. Who has the time to read a book? The book became a movie. Every page has to be exciting. Every page has to be something. You don't have to read the words. You can just look at the crazy pictures. These are the books in our farm stores.
Kids only want comics.
They only want comics. That's what it is. It's comics. They don't want to read the words. And this is what I'm talking about. Families that have technology necessarily. Go ahead.
I was talking to someone who completed their doctoral thesis over 35 years ago, and their thesis was on the shortened attention span in today's children, 35 years ago. And that was a study about that their span was from commercial to commercial on a TV show. That was 35 years ago.
Yeah.
So all the more.
Yeah. And they're designing this. All the technology today is designed. You don't sit on any app for more than, it's like, you just use your thumb to go from one thing to the next. This is the way it is. So these are the challenges. We're dealing with these challenges. You know, I was talking about with Mrs. Zimmerman before she called me and told me about some of the new challenges kids have. We found a new phenomenon over the past couple of years that I don't know if you deal with this as a Michanchos, but it's very common for teenagers not to respond. Not to respond. You call them up and you leave them a message and they don't call you back. Or you send them a text message for those who are text messaging and you don't get any response.
You call them to the office and they don't come.
You call them to the office and they don't come. Right?
True.
They don't
Class
respond.
starts, will come, just make lunch.
Yeah. They don't come. It's like we're trying, we're like what's going on? Like what is this? How do you not respond? But this is a part of so I was thinking about this, a lot of this has to do with the technology we have. We didn't give them a specialized training on this. It used to be, like when I was a kid, before there were answering machines and before there was a click, there was no such thing as ignoring a phone call. There was no such thing. Somebody called, it was important. And you stop whatever you're doing, you're in the middle of a serious conversation and you pick up the phone. Now, we have answering machine, and we have clicks, and we have cell phones, and we get text messages, and WhatsApp messages, and emails, and there's 3 phones in your house, and everybody's getting the same. It's impossible to answer everybody's messages and respond to every email and to answer every phone call. So what do the kids see? The kids see, look at your phone, and they say, I don't have time for this right now. Right? How many times have we said that? Or I'll deal with this a different time. Or just ignore it. How many times do you say somebody's calling to you? It's the phone rang, just ignore it. What was the message you sent?
I was thinking maybe we were giving over a message also that they're very important, but an answer a phone call, then.
So did we sit and explain it to them?
Mm-hmm.
Did we sit and explain that we prioritize? There's so many different things going on at the same time that it's impossible to answer every single one. So we're absolutely going to pick up a phone call when our parents call. We're absolutely going to pick up the phone call when a teacher calls. We're absolutely going to pick up the phone call when it's the Rav who's calling. And when it's the solicitor who's calling, then we ignore it for sure. Right? Nobody answers the phone to solicitors anymore. And if it's somebody in the neighborhood who's calling, sometimes we'll answer and sometimes we'll answer. Do we sit and say that there's very important things, there's not such important things, these are the things you do? So hopefully if the kids are very, very self-aware and they're aware of what's going on, they can pick this up, they learn this. But a lot of the kids, all these things that parents say, I'm not in the mood, ignore that, and they do that. So nobody's talked about this. I haven't heard anybody talk about this challenge with technology that we probably should be thinking about. Like, this is a new age thing. Kids are not, you call them into the office and they just don't come. Just don't come. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't say a word about that.
No, I'm saying, so my son, how can we help them? We hold a lot of students, and I have one emotional pain.
Okay, good.
And we really want to help them.
Now let's move over. Let's move on. I've heard this many times. That we get stronger through our Nesivos. We go through Nesivos in life and we get stronger. And for many times this is true. And there are also people that we see, we meet them all the time. People who have not gotten stronger through their Nesivos. There's a lot of broken people out there. I've heard this many times. I don't know if I'm being recorded, so I'm a little nervous to say this. I heard from many times that people said that Hashem doesn't give you an assignment that you can't overcome. I'm looking for a makarfet in Chazal.
A student asked me to see, remember Carpet,
Looking for a makarfet in
it
Chazal.
comes from his house.
It's a hikam, maybe. There's some people that, they have certain sorrows, and I don't, can we say that a child who has cancer is expected always to be in a good mood? Can we say that?
Who said that's
I think we have to adjust this. We have to adjust it. But there's a lot of broken, I don't want to get into a philosophical debate. There's a lot of broken people out there. There's a lot of broken people, and there's a lot of broken kids. I once, maybe I should say the tape off before this, but I was teaching, this was 20 years ago, I was teaching in a school, and there was a certain boy who was a very, very behavioral kid. He was very chutzpahdik, and he was very behavioral. And I was speaking to a certain Michanchos, and he told me I finally got this kid. And it could be it was just his expression, but I always think to myself, now we have a broken kid. There's a lot of broken people out there. We don't want to help break kids, but we want to think about, like, what is it that breaks